Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of English with Kirsty. And this week we're going to look at some words. In episode 11 we looked at words where there were two different ways of spelling the same word and the words were pronounced in the same way, but it was important to check your spelling. And what we're going to do this week is slightly different, but it's linked to that. It's looking at heteronyms. So heteronyms are words where you have one spelling but two different ways of pronouncing the word depending on the kind of word it is, the role it has in the sentence, and whether it's a noun or a verb, because sometimes that plays a role and sometimes that helps you to work out how to pronounce the word, because sometimes, or in many cases, if it's a noun then the emphasis is on the first syllable, and if it's a verb it's on the second or sometimes third, but usually second syllable. So this is important for when you're speaking more than when you're writing, because when you're writing it doesn't matter, it's the same spelling, but when you're speaking, if you choose the wrong pronunciation for the word that you want to say, it makes your sentence harder to understand, because that's not the word that people expected in that part of the sentence, and then they start to think, well, what exactly did you mean? So you may still use the right word, but the pronunciation is important if there are two ways of pronouncing this particular word. So I've got a list of 20 words. We're going to look at them today, and I'm also going to put them on the show notes page so you can have a look at the list and see how they're written, and then I will go through the two ways of pronouncing each word. So if you want to have a look at the show notes, it's www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 18. And there's also a contact form on there if you want to say anything to me, give me any feedback or ask any questions. And I've left the sign-up boxes from last week, so if you wanted to get the tips on how to write a good CV or how to prepare yourself for an interview in English, the sign-up box is still there. So if you missed that last week and you would like to get those documents, then you can sign up on the show notes page. So let's have a look at these words. We have 20 of them. So the first one is close or close. So if you want somebody to close the door, then it's close. But if you mean that something is nearby, then it's close. So close and close. The second one, conduct or conduct. So conduct is a bit like behaviour. So because of somebody's inappropriate conduct, they lost their job, for example. But conduct is a verb, and it means, or you can have a conductor who conducts the orchestra, or you can talk about whether something conducts heat or electricity. So conduct is the noun and conduct is the verb. Number 3, conflict or conflict. So if there is an argument, then it's a conflict, or you can talk about national conflict, but the noun is conflict. And if you say that there's conflicting evidence, it's conflict. That conflicts with what you've already told me. There's conflicting evidence about this. Content and content. So content is something, for example, yesterday I was writing content for my website. So content here is a noun. And if you say that somebody is content, it means they're happy, they're at peace, then it's content. And if I said I was writing content for my website, that just wouldn't make sense. So it's important to put the emphasis in the right place in the words to make them sound right, and also to enable the other person to understand what you're saying. If you start a new job, you'll get an employment contract. So here again the emphasis, because it's a noun, the emphasis is at the beginning of the word contract. But you can also contract a disease, an illness, and then it's contract. Deliberate, it means that you did something on purpose. If you did it deliberately, it wasn't an accident, you planned to do it. It was your intention. So that's deliberate, but there's also a verb to deliberate as well. If you're the bird, if you're talking about the bird, it's a dove. But if you're talking about a past form of the verb to dive, then it's dove. He dove into the icy water. So you couldn't say dove there because that's only for the bird. Dove is the past tense of to dive. Next one, excuse and excuse. So if you're late, you might try to make an excuse because the traffic was bad or something. So that's an excuse and that's a noun. But if you say to somebody, excuse me please, then it's excuse. You can't say excuse me please. That really doesn't make sense. So if it's a noun, you can say like, I'm tired of your excuses. But if you would like somebody to move out of the way or to ask them something, then it's excuse me. Or you could say, you know, I understand that, but that doesn't excuse your behaviour. The next one is minute. So most of the time when you see this word, it will be, or hear this word, it will be pronounced as minute. The meeting starts in 10 minutes, for example. But if you mean that something's really tiny, then it's minute. It's not minute, it's minute. And the next one is object or object. So I object to that comment. I disagree with it. I have a problem with it. But if you're talking about the noun, then it's an object. What is this object? The next one is permit and permit. So you can have, for example, you can have a parking permit, which means something that you either put in your car or you have, but it allows you to park in a certain place. So that's a noun. And it follows our rule again. So the emphasis is on the first syllable. It's a permit. But if you're talking about the verb, then it's permit. The next one, somebody might give you a gift, and then it's a present. So a Christmas present, for example, or a birthday present. And you can talk about the present tense, which is what you're doing now. However, if you have to give a presentation, then you're presenting information. I need to present our findings in front of the rest of the team, that kind of thing. So present or present. Project. So you're working on a project, but you can project images. Like, for example, if you've got a presentation and you've got a screen so that everybody can see it, then you're projecting the images or the slides. You're not projecting them because you're doing the project, but you're projecting the images. At the moment, I'm recording a podcast. So record means to, in this case, it's sound, but we're making a recording of the sound. But record is something that you keep. So all my expenditure, all my lessons and payments, that's kept in my records. So it's not in my records, it's my records. Because again, this is a noun, and because it's a noun, the emphasis is on the first part, so record, not record. The next word is refuse or refuse. So if it's a verb, I refuse to do this, it's unreasonable. I won't do it. I'm not going to do this. So that's refuse. But refuse is not really a word that's used in British English as much. It's more an American English word, but refuse means rubbish, things that you want to throw away. The next one is row and row. So if you have a row with somebody, you have an argument, then it's the ow sound at the end, row. But if you're talking about rows on a table, or you're rowing a boat, then it's row. Next one, subject or subject. Usually it's pronounced a subject, like the subject of an email, but you can also be subjected to something, and then it's subject. Tear and tear. So if you tear your clothes on something, you're going through the bushes and it rips, then it's tear. But if somebody's upset, they may have tears in their eyes. So tear or tear. If it's a wintry day and it's very windy outside, then you're talking about the wind. But if you wind something up, or you wind somebody up, which is a colloquial way of saying that you annoy them, then it's wind. So wind is the weather, but wind means you're turning something round and round, or you're winding somebody up and annoying them. And connected to that, wound is the past tense of wind. So wound or wound. If somebody has an injury, that's a wound, not a wound. So somebody wound somebody up, but they had a wound. So that's a quick run through these 20 words. As I said, they can all be found on the show notes page, which is www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 18. And I'll also put on there a link to the Facebook page, because some of you may not know that there is also a Facebook page for English with Kirsty. And on there, on weekdays, I post several times a day with tips or with questions or articles about learning languages. So if you want to find out some more information, you can head across, either follow the link on the show notes page, or you can go to facebook.com/englishwithkirsty. So I hope that was useful. Let me know if you have any comments or questions about it. I always enjoy hearing from my listeners, and I'll see you again next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.